Israel has approved a new Gaza War Plan, but appears to be signaling that it will not be a full Gaza occupation, but rather a temporary conquering of Gaza City. The offensive would only begin on October 7, 2025, the second anniversary of the start of the war, and only if ceasefire efforts do not materialize by then. Right-wing Finance Minister Smotrich says he's now lost faith that the Prime Minister has a plan to win the war. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has the story.
Israel appears to be moving forward with a plan to conquer Gaza City, but it falls short of demands from some ministers for a complete occupation of Gaza. Far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich says he's lost faith in the Prime Minister's desire to win the war. According to Smotrich, Netanyahu chose the half measure of capturing only Gaza City instead of conquering and annexing the entire enclave. Smotrich's comments fell short of an outright threat to quit the government, as he has done several times in the past. According to Smotrich, the plan for total victory means conquering all of Gaza. Earlier, bucking IDF warnings, the Security Cabinet approved Prime Minister Netanyahu's plan to conquer Gaza City and planned for the potential conquering of the rest. Reports on details of the plan say residents of Gaza City will have until October 7th to evacuate. That's the second anniversary of the October 7th Hamas invasion, and it has a built-in delay of more than 6 weeks. October also marks the 20th anniversary of Israeli disengagement from Gaza. The limitation on the takeover to Gaza City did not seem to go as far as what had earlier been described as a plan to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. Now the indication is that the IDF would move on to other areas only after the capture of Gaza City, if there is still no movement toward an agreement. This is what Netanyahu told Fox News.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas, and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas. And you were in the Gaza Strip today. You met Palestinians who are fighting Hamas because finally they see that they have a future. They can rid themselves of this awful tyranny that not only holds our hostages, but holds 2 million Palestinians in Gaza hostage. That's got to end.
The announcement does not use the word occupy and refers instead to taking over Gaza territories temporarily. The conquest would stop if a hostage for ceasefire deal is reached with Hamas. Some 1 million Palestinians, many already displaced multiple times since the start of the war, currently reside in Gaza City. The plan approved by the cabinet would see the entire population moved toward the south. The limitation of the takeover to Gaza City did not seem to go as far as Netanyahu's description in an interview with Fox News.
Are you saying today that you will take control of the entire 26-mile Gaza Strip, as it was 20 years ago to this month in 2005?
Well, we don't want to keep it. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. We don't want to be there as a governing body. We want to hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly without threatening us and giving Gazans a good life.
And after receiving new orders from the cabinet, IDF Chief Eyal Zamir headed to Gaza to meet officers to plan for the implementation of the plan that begins with the occupation of Gaza City. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
Despite his reportedly closed-door opposition to the Gaza City occupation plan, IDF Chief Eyal Zamir told military officers in Gaza that the army will carry out the plan in the best way possible. Zamir told officers the IDF is responsible for the army's readiness, the security of the state and its citizens, the return of the hostages, and the defeat of Hamas. Zamir clarified that the IDF is working on the new plan and will deepen preparations at the highest level. The IDF chief also stressed that as the war develops, the IDF will act to safeguard the lives of the hostages, allow the forces to refresh and operate according to the values and spirit of the IDF, with the aim of creating conditions for the return of the hostages and the collapse of the Hamas regime. Zamir's comments came as the IDF entered day 674 of the war in Gaza. Over the weekend, ongoing IDF operations continued in the Strip. The Artillery Corps Elite Skyriders unit and troops from the 401st Armored Brigade destroyed a rocket launcher after it was used to fire a rocket at Nir Am, a kibbutz in southern Israel.
And a last-ditched effort to secure a deal before Israel's military takeover of the massive Gaza City. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with the Qatari Prime Minister in Spain over the weekend to discuss a comprehensive plan to end the war and get all the hostages out of captivity. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian reports on the developments after thousands of people hit the streets in protest in Tel Aviv.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Tel Aviv after Shabbat on Saturday night, protesting for the hostage deal on the backdrop of the military expansion that was approved in Gaza City. The new plan will likely extend into areas where the hostages are being held, which has caused outrage, fearing the operations could lead to the execution and harming of hostages still alive in the area. Protesters began their evening inside of Hostages Square, with hundreds of people swarming the outside of the IDF's headquarters in the center of the city, led by the families of hostages who are hoping a deal can be secured to get all of the hostages out before Israel goes inside of Gaza City. Meanwhile, some of the families called on reservists not to participate in the war expansion if they get called up.
Put forward a concrete proposal to end the war and secure the return of all the hostages this week before the military operation begins. There is no time. The entire Jewish people will stand behind you with an iron fist.
Their cry comes in line with the new reported plan U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is working on with the Qatari Prime Minister as the two met in Ibiza, Spain over the weekend. Axios reports they're working on a comprehensive plan that will end the war all at the same time. Every single hostage would be released altogether instead of in phases. The reported plan is the same tune Witkoff discussed with the families of hostages he met with in Tel Aviv 2 weeks ago, explaining the Trump administration doesn't want any piecemeal deals. Lizar, ultimately, Israeli society remains divided on this issue, with one side of the country saying they wish the Israeli Security Cabinet voted to take the entire Gaza Strip, while the other side is worried about the condition of the hostages, hoping that there is just one more opportunity a deal could be reached before this expansion continues. We are hearing at this point in time during the day that the families of hostages are actually calling for a general strike to take place next Sunday in response to this military expansion. Lidar?
Thank you, Shosh. And now some tragic news as Holocaust survivor Olga Weisberg passed away about 2 months after being severely injured in an Iranian missile strike in Rehovot during the 12-day war. 30 people were killed as a result of direct missile hits during the Israel-Iran war in June. May her memory be for a blessing. And joining us now for a special panel with more on the planned Israeli takeover of Gaza City and the push for a new hostages deal, our Lieutenant Colonel Advocate Maurice Hirsch from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, and Colonel Rich Outson, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thank you both for joining us today. So, Maurice, let's start with you. What do you make of the cabinet decision to take over Gaza City? Is it enough to achieve the war goals? I mean, it certainly does fall short of a full occupation of Gaza.
So it seems that the decision that's been made is another almost partial decision to move forward and to conquer yet another part of the Gaza Strip that we've been operating in before, that we've held before, and that we've then pulled back from. This is another step in really what needs to be the all-out conquest of the Gaza Strip to ensure that we do actually achieve the goals that the government of Israel set at the start of the war, destroying Hamas militarily, destroying its governance capabilities, and no less importantly, freeing the hostages. For the last 4 months, we haven't seen any movement almost on that subject. And it's something that is now becoming more and more pressing as every day goes by.
And Rich, I want to turn to you now. I mean, what does this actually entail on the ground? You know, the IDF chief is said to oppose the move. Do you think this could potentially harm Israel's security, endanger the hostages, and play into Hamas's hands, sort of becoming entangled in Gaza once again without any clear out?
Right. Well, as a military man, I've seen the difficulties involved with trying to translate political guidance into concrete military plans on the ground. So absolute clarity is necessary. I agree with one Israeli observer of the current decision, which is to say that it is unprecedented in its ambiguity. So this is neither a conquest nor is it something akin to the general's plan that has been touted before in terms of having a zone of exclusion and keeping it free of civilians while you build a new administration. This is very much a halfway measure. And saying that we're going to surround Gaza City, but not conquer the entirety of the Strip, doesn't really bring you any closer to the political conclusion of the campaign. So in that regard, this is a real challenge for the IDF. To be able to execute this sort of threading the needle, I guess you could call it, where you're going to damage Hamas control of the Strip through occupation or at least encirclement of Gaza City, but not the rest of the Strip. We haven't seen anything over the last 20 months or so to indicate that sort of half measure is really going to work.
So, Maurice, Rich saying this is sort of a half measure, and I do want to ask, why the delay until October? Is this perhaps maybe more of a measure to try and pressure Hamas into reaching a ceasefire deal than it is to actually take over the Gaza Strip?
So I think it's probably a combination of the two. You can't switch from one modus operandi to another with the blink of an eye. To prepare the next onslaught would require really extensive preparation, trying to understand exactly how you would achieve, as Richard said, the very ambiguous goal that's been set so far. And that requires both recruiting more members from the reserves, training them again, preparing all of really the envelope that's required for that type of a move, moving the population again southwards, mobilizing all of the different equipments that would be needed, all of the different elements of the army that would need to be and play a part in that type of a movement. So that takes time for planning. It's not something that you can do overnight. And so that, I would assume, is one part of the consideration. Obviously, the second part is to show Hamas that we really do mean business, as it were. Hamas has enjoyed really a tremendous boost over the last few days with the declarations of France and the Brits and the Canadians, and really this growing recognition of the state of Palestine, giving them really the moral boost that they really needed to dig their heels in. Why should they ever come to a hostage deal if they're achieving their political goals, albeit at the expense of more Gazans dying? But they just don't care about the Gazans dying. They're using their deaths to delegitimize Israel around the world. So for them, it's really a win-win-win situation from all points of view. And it's something which Israel also needs to take into account. So maybe that indication that we really have lost our patience with this idea of another partial deal going forward, maybe that's what will be needed to push Hamas into its final surrender.
And Rich, despite the criticism and the pushback from international actors, the United States seems to be backing Israel here, but at the same time is trying to push forward yet another hostage deal. We know that Hamas has rejected every deal that's been put forward. Do you foresee a scenario where the U.S. will stop Israel from actually moving forward with this plan, or are they sort of, going forward, forging ahead in sync at this time?
Well, the patience of Washington is for Israel's security and for getting the hostages back is significant. I think there's still some slack in the line, so to speak, in that regard. However, what there is not tolerance or patience for is doing this poorly. And I think that there's a couple of different concerns coming out of Washington. The first is, of course, the humanitarian costs. And as Maurice pointed out, that Hamas is willing to fight to maybe not the last drop of Palestinian blood, but they're certainly willing to have a lot of martyrs to get their political goals met. So when Israel does, as I mentioned, half measures or things that don't fundamentally alter the political balance within the Gaza Strip, it really does reward Hamas's whole strategy for that. This was one of the virtues, by the way, of the so-called general's plan, because it would have actually excluded Hamas rule in a fundamental way as a military task from a large portion of the Strip, at least a third, and that starts to really damage the political standing. When you, as a military force, have to fight in, around, and among civilians, not only does it make it much more difficult to break the bond between them and the Hamas overlords, but it also opens up strategic criticisms from Europe, and that is drop by drop becoming a very big political and strategic problem for Israel, this loss of legitimacy because the idea that it's military force that doesn't actually lead to political change. I think you're going to see more pressure from Washington to conclude this, both because Trump's a deal maker and he wants to see an end to the fighting, but also because this interminable process where the military force grinds on, the hostages are not freed, and the political calculus doesn't change in the Strip looks a lot like strategic incompetence.
All right, so a lot on Israel's plate and a lot of big decisions coming up in terms of the future of the war in Gaza. Thank you both for your analyses today.
Thank you very much.
And now we are excited to launch a special series in partnership with Israel Bonds, one-on-one with Larra Lazi. I'm excited to announce my new show, so register now to access our premiere episode featuring guest Rowan Osman, a Lebanese Syrian-German activist who transformed her past shaped by extremism into a future of bold empowerment. Join us Wednesday, August 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can scan the QR code on your screen to RSVP. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. And moving on, the United Nations Security Council is meeting today to discuss the situation in the Middle East following Israel's approved plan to take control of Gaza City. Predictably, world condemnations are mounting, even from some of Israel's key allies in Europe. All the details in the following report.
Let me start today with a statement. The Secretary General is gravely alarmed by the decision of the Israeli government to take control of Gaza City. The decision marks a dangerous escalation and risks deepening the already catastrophic consequences for millions of Palestinians. It could further endanger more lives, including the lives of the remaining hostages.
Right on cue, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a statement critical of Israel, calling on Jerusalem to stand down and avoid its planned takeover of Gaza City. The United Nations Security Council even convened an emergency meeting on the issue. And while UN criticism of Israel has become the norm, this latest move has also drawn sharp criticism, threats, and even actions from European leaders. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said on X that the Israeli government's decision to further extend its military operation in Gaza must be reconsidered, as she called for a ceasefire. European Council President Antonio Costa, also posting on X, said that such a decision must have consequences for EU-Israel ties. The UK and France also voiced their opposition to the move, and Dutch Foreign Minister Caspar Veldkamp told Axios very bluntly that Netanyahu's cabinet is losing Europe, totally. He added that Europe stands with Israel, but not with the policy of the Israeli government. But perhaps the most surprising action came from Germany, which announced that it would freeze any exports of military equipment to Israel that could be used in Gaza until further notice. Yet despite the mounting world criticism and increasing calls for a ceasefire, Israel remains steadfast and determined to move forward with its military actions to achieve its war goals, the eradication of Hamas from Gaza and the return of all the hostages. And this weekend, we saw mass protests against Israel sweeping throughout Europe, with today a day of action, as it's being called, is taking place in Greece, with nationwide protests against Israel sweeping through major tourist destinations. The day seeks to target Israeli tourists in the country, with the foreign ministry warning tourists to remain cautious and on high alert. And despite the international condemnations, the United States is standing firmly behind Israel's military plans in Gaza. More from ILTV's executive editor, Maayan Hoffman.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee says Washington continues to back Israel's right to decide how it defends itself, including the move toward taking control of Gaza militarily. Speaking from his office in Jerusalem, Huckabee made clear that the administration has no intention of dictating Israel's policy.
Up until this very moment, the position of the president has been that he respects that Israel has a right to defend itself. It has a right to determine how it does that. But it's never been the role of the U.S. to dictate Israel's policy.
His remarks came hours after Israel's security cabinet approved a plan for the IDF to take control of Gaza City, the largest city in the Hamas-run enclave. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the objective is to dismantle the terror group and bring home the remaining hostages. Around 50 hostages are still in Gaza, with officials believing about 20 are alive. The decision has sparked condemnation from world leaders and aid groups, but U.S. officials are signaling unwavering support. Vice President J.D. Vance, speaking to reporters in Britain, stressed that the U.S. will not be moving toward recognition of a Palestinian state.
We have no plans to recognize a Palestinian state. I don't know what it would mean to really recognize a Palestinian state, given the lack of a functional government there.
Vance added that President Donald Trump has been clear about his Middle East goals and intends to keep pursuing them. He was in the UK for meetings with British officials, including Foreign Minister David Lammy.
And meanwhile, in regional news, Israel's Leviathan partners have secured a crucial export deal with Egypt in what will be the largest gas deal in Israeli history. All the details in the following report by ILTV's Devo Klein.
Israel's New Med Energy, formerly known as Delek Drilling, owned 45% stake at the Leviathan oil rig off of Israel's coastline. The Leviathan is one of the largest deepwater oil rigs in the world and has served as a crucial source of revenue for the state of Israel. Now, the Leviathan partners have just confirmed finalizing a massive export deal with Egypt that is expected to funnel hundreds of millions of shekels in revenue from gas royalties. The Leviathan partners secured the deal at an estimated $35 billion, the largest gas deal in Israeli history. So what does this deal entail? Israel's previous deal with Egypt, signed in 2019, sat at an export of 64 million cubic meters of natural gas. After today's deal, Egypt will receive 3 times that, a whopping 130 billion CBM. That's 22% of the natural gas from the Leviathan oil rig and 12% of Israel's whole natural gas reserve. In the first stage, set to take place by 2026, Israel will supply 20 billion CBM of natural gas to Egypt. Then, in the second stage, after the Leviathan rig has undergone extensive construction and alterations, a second dose will be sent to Egypt at the size of 110 billion CBM. The deal should last through to 2040 before another deal can be signed.
And our final story tonight, central Israel is being hit hardest by what meteorologists say are some of the hottest days in the past 50 years, with record highs across the country. The Mediterranean coastal cities are reaching highs of 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The Jordan Valley is reaching a record 50 centigrade or 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Israelis are advised to take serious precautions when going out. Emergency services are urging the public to drink at least 3 liters of water per day and avoid prolonged sun exposure during the hottest hours. And with that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside excessive heat, with highs of 37 degrees Celsius or 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. And you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Larra Lazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.